A plane that could fly higher than any missile, faster than any fighter, and vanish before radar could even react. The Soviets laughed. They thought America was bluffing, bragging, exaggerating. But soon, that laughter turned to something else: panic. Because this black, alien-looking jet was rewriting everything they thought they knew about war in the sky. This is the story of how the Soviets mocked the SR-7 Blackbird until they realized there was nothing on Earth that could stop it.
In the late 1950s, the United States had a problem. The U-2 spy plane, America's pride of reconnaissance, was shot down deep over the Soviet Union in 1960. The pilot, Francis Gary Powers, was captured. It was a global humiliation, proof that Soviet missiles could now reach American aircraft even at extreme altitudes. That one event sent shockwaves through the CIA. If America wanted to keep an eye on Soviet nuclear developments, it needed something faster, higher, and more untouchable. So Lockheed's Secret Skunk Works division got a call and a challenge: build a plane so advanced, so fast, that no missile on Earth could touch it. The result was the SR-7 Blackbird, a jet that looked like it came from another world. Matte black titanium skin, two massive engines that screamed through the stratosphere, capable of cruising at over Mach 3, that's 3 times the speed of sound, while flying higher than 85,000 feet. But when word of this futuristic spy plane leaked out, the Soviets laughed it off. Their engineers and generals called it a Hollywood plane, nothing but American propaganda. They believed physics would stop it, that titanium would melt, that pilots would black out, that the whole idea was just another American bluff. They couldn't have been more wrong.
When the SR-7 began its reconnaissance missions in the mid-1960s, the Soviets started tracking something strange on radar. A blip that appeared, moved faster than anything they'd ever seen, then vanished into thin air. At first, they assumed it was a glitch, but soon reports piled up. Soviet radar stations from the Baltic to the Barents Sea confirmed it. A single aircraft, flying at unimaginable speed, repeatedly crossing near Soviet borders, and not a single missile could touch it. The Soviets scrambled their fastest interceptors, the MiG-25 Foxbat. The MiG-25 was built for one purpose: to chase the Blackbird. It could fly almost as high and almost as fast, but almost doesn't cut it when your target is the SR-7. The MiG-25 could hit Mach 2.8 in a straight dash, but it couldn't sustain it. If pilots tried, their engines overheated, warped, and risked exploding mid-flight. Soviet pilots called those chases suicide runs. Missiles were no better. The Soviets launched dozens of SA-2 and SA-5 surface-to-air missiles over the years, each time trying to catch the elusive American jet. Every missile failed. The Blackbird simply outran them, literally.
To the Soviets, it was a nightmare. Every time the SR-7 passed near their airspace, it collected priceless intelligence, radar layouts, missile sites, fleet movements, and there was nothing they could do. Their radar systems couldn't even keep up. The Blackbird was so fast that by the time radar locked on, the plane was already gone. Even when they predicted its routes, the physics just didn't add up. The air at 85,000 feet is so thin that Soviet missile guidance systems couldn't properly adjust. The heat generated by Mach 3 flight made most airframes unstable, and missile seekers lost lock in the hot, thin air. The Soviets kept upgrading their missiles, fine-tuning their radars, and even reprogramming interceptor tactics. None of it mattered. Every time they thought they were ready, the SR-71 just flew a little higher, a little faster.
By the late 1970s, the Soviets tried again, this time with the MiG-31 Foxhound. Faster, better radar, longer-range missiles. It was the next evolution of the Foxbat. Pilots like Major Miyake, who flew the MiG-31, later admitted they were briefed on the Blackbird constantly. They studied its routes, altitude, and timing. Soviet command even designed specific ambush intercepts, setting MiGs in position far ahead of the SR-71's flight path, hoping to catch it off guard. It sounded clever, but even that failed. Miyake claimed to have locked radar on the Blackbird over a dozen times, but every intercept ended the same way. The SR-71 would appear on radar, climb slightly, accelerate to Mach 3.2, and vanish. The MiG-31 simply couldn't close the distance. Its missiles were powerful, R-33 long-range interceptors, but their speed and guidance systems couldn't handle the altitude or target velocity. To make matters worse, the SR-71 wasn't just fast, it was smart.
Most people think the SR-71 survived by sheer speed. That's only half true. What really made it untouchable was its brain, an advanced suite of electronic countermeasures decades ahead of its time. The Blackbird could detect radar locks from hundreds of miles away. It could jam targeting systems, confuse missile guidance, and even reflect false radar signals to make it appear somewhere else entirely. And if that didn't work, it just hit the throttle. SR-71 pilots described it like this. The moment a missile warning sounded, they'd light the afterburners, pitch up slightly, and accelerate to Mach 3.3. The missile's fuel would run out before it ever got close. To this day, not a single SR-71 was ever shot down by enemy fire. Dozens of missiles were launched. Every one of them missed.
Still, that doesn't mean the missions were safe. SR-71 pilots often saw contrails of Soviet fighters trying to climb toward them, sometimes 6 at once. One mission over the Baltic saw 6 MiG-23s scramble to intercept a Blackbird. They reached their maximum altitude, afterburners roaring, but the SR-71 was still over 20,000 feet above them, calmly taking photos the entire time. Another time, over the Barents Sea, an SR-71 suffered an engine failure at altitude, forcing it to descend thousands of feet. For the first time, it was within reach of Soviet radar. MiGs launched immediately, but before they could close in, something unexpected happened. A group of Swedish Viggen fighters appeared. The Swedes, flying under a neutral flag, escorted the crippled Blackbird back toward international airspace, effectively saving it from being intercepted by the Soviets. That story stayed classified for decades until Sweden publicly honored those pilots in 2018. Even when damaged, even when things went wrong, the Blackbird still couldn't be caught.
So how did this jet remain undefeated for over 2 decades of Cold War tension? It came down to 4 factors: speed, altitude, intelligence, and politics. First, speed. The SR-71 could cruise faster than any missile of its era could sustain. Even modern interceptors would struggle to keep up. Second, altitude. At 85,000 feet, there's barely enough air to breathe, let alone guide a missile. The Soviets learned that higher wasn't always better. Radar tracking became unstable, and missile control systems would simply give up. Third, intelligence. Every mission was meticulously planned. The SR-71's routes were calculated to stay just outside Soviet borders, skimming along the edge of legality. It would fly in international airspace, close enough to see everything.
far enough to avoid escalation. And lastly, politics. The Soviets couldn't afford to start a war over a reconnaissance plane. Shooting down an SR-7 risked direct conflict with the United States, something neither side wanted. So even as Soviet radar screens lit up, their generals hesitated. Orders rarely came to fire. And even when they did, it was already too late. The Blackbird was gone.
By the 1980s, the laughter had stopped completely. The same Soviet engineers who mocked the SR-7 in the 60s were now obsessively studying it, desperate to build something that could match it. They experimented with new alloys, upgraded engines, radar systems, and missiles, but they never succeeded. One Soviet pilot later said, "When the Blackbird flew, we didn't chase it, we watched it, like we watched a thunderstorm. You don't fight the weather, you just respect it." Even the MiG-31, the pinnacle of Soviet interceptor design, couldn't outpace it. The SR-7 was simply too far ahead of its time, a weapon of information that no one could shoot down, no matter how hard they tried. And that was its true genius. It didn't need guns or bombs or missiles. It won with speed and knowledge.
When the SR-7 was finally retired in the 1990s, it wasn't because it had been defeated. It was because satellites had taken over its job. But even today, nothing has truly replaced it. Modern jets like the F-22 or F-35 are stealthier, but none can fly faster than the Blackbird. Even cutting-edge hypersonic projects struggle to match its sustained speed. It remains the only aircraft to set multiple world records for speed and altitude, all still unbroken decades later. To the Soviets, it was a ghost. To its pilots, it was a beast. And to history, it remains proof of what happens when human engineering pushes beyond what anyone thought was possible.
In the end, the SR-7 Blackbird wasn't just a spy plane, it was a statement. A flying declaration that speed, intelligence, and innovation could outmatch even the largest armies. The Soviets mocked it, then feared it, and finally respected it. Because sometimes the greatest weapon isn't the one that fires first, it's the one that never gets caught.